We are live, gentlemen. Welcome to the Weekly Jargon. I'm Abel Perez.
Jose Rodriguez.
Rohi Zachariah.
And today we are live, coming to you again live on Facebook. We hope to get your live interaction. We're going to be talking about tipping.
Yeah.
Fellas, tipping is probably one of the most controversial things. And I know some people who are so adamant about tipping or not tipping that it's caused little feuds or battles between friends, right? I'll never go to dinner with that guy again. He don't tip enough, right? And man, I can't keep up with that person. They tip too much, right? So we're going to dive into the logics of tipping. You're going to hear our ideas of what a good tip is and everything that surrounds that. Who's to blame? The owners, the client, the customers, the waiter, right? I don't know.
Definitely, and on the opposite end, especially folks that receive tips. I mean, what are they saying? What are they seeing, especially with customers? And I'd love to hear your comments if you are seeing us live and you have something to say about tips. Are people cheap? Do they provide enough tips? And that would be great for us to hear and start this conversation. But
All right.
I think it's a good way to segue into the tipping.
Yeah. So first question, guys. What's the biggest tip you guys have ever given percentage-wise?
Well, I'm pretty good with numbers, and I try to stay, if it's a good tip, 20 to 25%. And that's probably on my the farthest end that I go to with tipping. But there may be a case where I like the service so much that I just, hey, here's an additional $20 or something, or something. But it's very rare. I mean, nowadays, you expect the service, and if it's not there, then you kind of bring it to a minimal, and that's at least 15%.
Definitely.
I think a lot of this is going to have to do with the forms of payment now. But I know when we say 20%, like we were talking about earlier, on a $10 bill, it's only $2. It doesn't even sound like a lot anymore to give somebody a $2 tip. But
right.
That's your 20% right there.
Right.
But I think that's probably about like Jose was saying, 20-25% is probably on the high end of what I would say I'm doing on a tip. So
yeah, I think when I was initially thinking of what's the highest tip you've ever given, you think of $20 on a $100 bill. There's your 20%, right? And then Jose said, well, what about the $10 with the $2 on a $10, right? And so then I thought, okay, well, I guess I do tip a little bit higher. Let's say my bill's $20, whatever, right? You might tip $5, right? And so that's your 25%. And so I guess it does depend, but when you're with a big group of people and the bill really adds up, $200-$300. Now all of a sudden you're having to add, $40, $60, $80 onto that tab, and it can be a little much, but it does seem like maybe 20 or anywhere from 15 to 25%. That seems to be the accepted range, right? I know, Jose, you had a statistic, right? You pulled it up. What is the average American tip?
Well, the average American, based on the data that we got, was showing that they tip anywhere between 16%. I think 16%, and that's based off a poll. I think of 57% of respondents that came back. Obviously, men being the higher tippers according to the data, and women on the 11 to 20%. And again, it may be because a lot of the people that are in the service industry, if for example, for men, for example, they get good service from maybe a waitress, right? And she comes up and she's always making sure that your coffee is filled or something, and you like the attitude they're talking to you, you're more likely to provide them a really good tip. Now, had it been the opposite sex or maybe a waiter, you may say, and he's just conversing with your maybe your spouse or your date, then you may say, well, I don't like that. I'm not too crazy about you. Let me just, But overall, I think, people that do depend on tips, obviously, they should know that, and you can't expect them to be on their A game every single day at every single hour because they're human, right? Mm-hmm. But for the most part, if they're out trying to earn that tip, then they're going to do everything to elevate their service so that they can make you feel like, you know what, I want to come back and I like your service and here's an additional tip.
Yeah.
The one thing that I will say, and I know we'll probably talk about this, is when I go to a store nowadays and I'm ordering my food, I have to order my food, but yet there's a screen that pops out there with these iPads and it says your tip. And it makes me feel very awkward because, well, you haven't served me yet. You haven't given me any service, but yet I'm required to fill in a tip.
Right.
How about none? And
Right.
and I try to do that purposely because I really don't feel like I've received any service yet, other than you're taking my order, which it's built in your price.
Yeah.
So I don't see why I would want to do anything further.
Yeah, my rule of thumb is if I have to walk up and order my own food from you, right, at a counter, and then I have to go pour my own drink at the fountain, I have to go pick up my meal, when my order is called, and then I have to throw it all away, right? I don't know if that, I don't believe that constitutes for a tip, because that's what I correlate tipping for is all of the service, right? The coming to me, seating me, finding me a table, seating me, making sure the table's clean, coming, taking my order, asking me how my day is, obviously all the customer service aspect of it, but bringing me a refill, keeping an eye on when my drink's getting low, asking me if I'd like anything else, asking me if everything's okay with my meal, bringing it to me, making sure it's nice and hot. I mean, all of that's customer service. That does constitute for an additional cost or additional payment, which would be a tip, versus what the menu says the price is, right? Because that's just for the food item that I'm selecting, but the service that's important to me. So if I'm walking up to a taco truck, I'm not going to tip. Mm-hmm. If I'm buying a snow cone from your cart, I'm not going to tip. Your prices should already include the desired profit margin, mm-hmm. right? Don't try to be profitable by saying, oh, we'll get that through tips, right? Mm-hmm. Well, then you better be like, providing an additional service rather than just doing the basic, here you go, here's your food. So that part of it for me is still a thing where I become a little bit of a prude when it comes to tipping. I'm like, I ain't doing it.
And I think that's why, with you look at like Starbucks, if you order from the app, I think they give you like an hour after you place the order to actually still give a tip, because like you said, mm-hmm. I mean, I may go in there and this coffee tastes like crap. Why would I tip those guys, Right. But the thing is like you said before, tipping is an additional service. And I think that's where I've always had the biggest problem, is because, if I go to a restaurant and maybe the kids are rowdy, or I got to be at a meeting in like, an hour and I want to get in and get out, that's the tip. That's like you were saying, like, hey, here's $20, put us ahead of the line. Right. What I mean, give me something extra that warrants that, not, hey, we have 6 people and your restaurant automatically tips me the 15%.
Right.
And by the way, you don't get the 15%. Everybody in the restaurant gets the 15% when you provide me the good service or not. You know? And that's, again, and the percentage is where I think is the biggest problem. Like you said, nowadays, food prices have gone up. All right, 6 people, bill could be maybe like $200. You want 15% on that? I mean, that's a bit of money for providing me a service you kind of already needed to. And then again, you can't get a reduction. You can't say, well, the service is crap. Give me the 15% off, But a lot of that, I think, also has to do with forms of payment. Like, people don't carry cash anymore. So those kiosks that you're piling into, they don't really have a means, and people don't have that extra like $5 to say, okay, let me figure it out, and then by the way, here's the 15% later because it was actually that good.
Right.
But that's where it is. I mean, it's not to be cheap. It's like you said. Okay, if I'm gonna go order a sandwich from the little place down the road, or like your little taco truck, am I slipping you that 15% because you're gonna put me ahead of the line? Right. Are you gonna give me a little extra meat on my taco? Like, what are you giving me that's warranting that money?
Yeah, that's a good point. I remember one time we go into a spot downtown. Off of Gateway, and it's late at night, and my uncle, he gives the guy a $10 bill, and he says, hey, and do you have that whatever, right? It was like nopales with like a special little salsa that they didn't have out there. oh yeah, Manuel, I'll go grab it for you. You know, he goes inside, grabs it, pulls it out, and then like starts serving it. And our tacos were loaded.
Yeah.
And they had all this extra stuff that the public, you know, and that's where I think as a business owner or business owners out there who are trying to create that customer loyalty, that customer experience, those little things like that. I mean, that could just be part of your service, but when clients or customers feel like they're so good here that if I give them, you know, if I acknowledge them and scratch their back, man, they're going to take care of me. They're going to really, you know, roll out the red carpet for me. Yeah. And we're just at a little taco truck, you know, got a good buzz going on, and we felt that way there. I mean, you could only imagine how you would feel at a higher end restaurant, you know.
And you see that, especially when you have parties of over 10, you know, people will tell you that the gratuity is already built in, right? So you expect that service also. I mean, if they're going to charge you gratuity because you have 10 or more people in your party, then you expect that the service is there. I mean, it may not just be one person waiting on you. There may be additional. But coming back to what you said about the kiosk, and that's what makes people uncomfortable when, again, you're ordering something and they give you these amounts and then other or custom. And I go, well, shit, where's the no tip until I get the service that I feel is appropriate for the service that I'm about to get. But, you know, there are times where I go sit out with my family and, you know, if I have someone that's continuously coming around, bringing a good service, good attitude, then that makes me feel better that, you know what, I'm actually being treated good.
Right.
And not that you shouldn't at any restaurant. I mean, if you're trying to establish yourself as a brand name restaurant or as something that you want people to continuously come back, then your service needs to be at the top of the priority list, because that's what you do. You want to retain your customers. But if they make you feel that extra special, then that's what's going to allow you to dip into that pocket and say, you know what, I'm going to give you a 20 to 25%. And I'm sure the waiters or waitresses that are out there in this industry, especially in the restaurant industry, because, I mean, tips are everywhere. You can be out at a theme park, you can be at a tour, you can be at a vacation stay outside of the United States, and tipping is common in all these other places, especially in Europe and Mexico. Wherever you go, a tip is always something that's a custom. But the way I look at it is, like you said, Abel, it has to be accompanied to the level of service you receive. Now, here's a question for you guys, and maybe it's something. So, do tips? And you said it best. When I go through the drive-through at Starbucks and I'm behind a line of maybe 10 people, and I'm trying to get a coffee. As soon as I get my coffee, they took my order over the phone or over the microphone that's outside, and I'm in line, and then there's a box there. I mean, typically what happens if I have cash and I have change, and it's, you know, I'll give them a $5 or something, and there's change to that, then I'll put whatever loose change I have. But that certainly shouldn't constitute me giving you an additional tip for something that it's part of the service, right? I mean, what did you do to go outside? Did you come to my car and give me that? Then that would really constitute something different.
Yeah. Well, there's another coffee shop that ruffles my feathers, and they're always about that. They're the old iPad with the tip percentage, right? And it's Dutch Brothers. And man, it bugs me because you go into Dutch Brothers and they're so popular. They have a big line. It's like an In-N-Out line, right? It's nice and long, but. So what they've decided to do, just like In-N-Out, is, okay, we'll have people out there with kiosks taking orders so that the kitchen can just be processing orders, right? So we're not waiting until they get to the actual speaker, right? So they're choosing to do that as a service to themselves, right? So that they can expedite orders. Sometimes you go and there's nobody in line, but there's still somebody out there taking your order. They take your order. Would you like to leave a tip? Whoa, why am I tipping right now? I'm in my car driving through, just want my coffee that's already priced higher than what I should probably am comfortable paying. But now now I'm being pressured to tip you know? And at Dutch Brothers, they have a really cool culture. I mean, the people are younger, enthusiastic, and they're very bubbly. And, you know, hey, how's your day going? You know, they do bring that, right? But sheesh, let me tell you, sometimes it's very awkward, you know. And I have experienced where some of the people taking the order, they'll hit no right away, you know, and it's almost like they kind of know, like, you know, it's kind of embarrassing. I'm not even going to ask, right? But then there's others that are like, oh, would you like to leave a tip, you know, and your $6 coffee, you know, now costs $8, you know, and you're thinking, geez, you know, if I do that five days a week, you know, not only should I maybe not even be spending, you know, buying coffee 5 days a week, but now that's an extra, you know, $10 that I'm wasting each week. But I think electronic payments have maybe inflated tips, the expectation for tips, because it's no longer, hey, what change do you have in your pocket? You know, a few loose dollars, a $5 maybe. You know, it's almost like, well, your bank account's right here. How much, you know, you could tip me whatever you want, right?
And it should almost be a charity. That should be a write-off. Like, it's
Yeah.
not part of my meal. That was a charity donation I made to that organization. I want to write off that tip money.
Yeah.
But the problem with your food industry, you know, when we talk about your restaurants, see, I don't have a problem if Jose, if you were serving me food and you did a great job and I want to reward you, but that $20 I reward you goes to the manager, goes to the owner, goes to the cook, goes to the guy taking out the garbage, and you go, well, wait a minute, but you're the face of the company. You're the one that provided me, and it's got to be across the board, you know. And there's plenty of articles showing that a lot of these companies actually retain the majority of that tipping that you're giving. So again, it goes back to the bottom line of this company inflating versus it actually going to, you know, what it was supposed to go to, is that person. And I know you go outside of the industry, like I was talking to you. I mean, you look at the casino, okay? If I go to the casino, those guys make a lot of their money off of their tipping. But I'm only going to tip if I'm doing good at the casino, right? So, you know, if you take that kind of aspect, I mean, it makes sense. If I'm losing at the table, the dealer's not going to look at me and go like, hey, when you're done and you're out of money, pull out another $20 and tip me for the fun that we've had. Like, it's the opposite. We're doing good. We had fun. I did you good. I put money in your pocket. Give me a little percentage of it. And I think that's what tipping is supposed to be about. Not automatic, not just give it to me. Not if you don't, let me get the sad eyes and, oh, you're too cheap. You know, you didn't do me right, you know. That's the problem.
Yeah, and unfortunately, especially in like a service-based industry, and we have a lot of service that we do, right? And especially in hospitality, restaurants.
Yeah.
And I think the expectation is that, tips should be part of the conversation, or should be part of the total package or the total service. And the question that I was going to ask you is, for example, when you check into a hotel, obviously nowadays, you know, with COVID coming in and the pandemic, it kind of really created a behavior as far as, you know, how you stay, you know, hey, try to stay not too close to people, 6 feet, mask and what have you. So I don't know if that changed the culture of it now, but when I go to a hotel now, they don't change the beds. It used to be daily, and for a while there, they were just doing it. We'll do it every other such and such, maybe because of staff and what have you. So I mean, but you're expected. I mean, I don't know if that type of hospitality service, are you required to tip? For example, you're there for 3 nights, right? And whoever's doing housekeeping comes in, cleans your bed, does everything, your room, whatever. And then after the 3rd day, do you sit there and write them a check? Do you sit there and give them a tip? And I've always wondered and pondered if that was something that was that's expected. Mm-hmm. And I'm sure many of you that are probably watching this, you can say, well, yeah, that's part of it. You should. Mm-hmm. Let us know your comments, because, you know, I personally didn't think that was the case.
Well, what do you think of now? What do you think it's right or wrong?
Well, because when I walk out, as I walk out of my room, I see the people there. And a lot of them, I guess I can relate to them, because if you look at the people that are giving you that service, you look at them as maybe migrant folks that are, because they're pretty much taking over the industry. And if I'll walk in there, a lot of times people don't say hi to them. Mm-hmm. I'll walk by and I'll say it in Spanish if I feel that they speak Spanish, and because I hear them speaking, right? So I'll say, hola, ¿qué tal? And now because I've made that connection, now I feel like I should. Mm-hmm. And
hola, ¿qué tal? And they're gonna, hello, sir. How you doing?
Hello, sir. But the thing is, you know, I really do feel like sometimes it's I feel like this need to whatever I have, you know, I would say, hey, thank you very much for this service. The room is very clean. I appreciate everything, and that's what you expect when you stay at one of these 4 stars, or I mean, I don't think I've ever made it to a 5 star.
Is the opposite. Like, so if I don't tip, is the room going to be crap? No, it's going to be. That's the level you're expecting. The tipping is when you say, hey, you know what, I need an extra, a towel, or can you give me some extra soap because, they're kind of stingy here. That's the tip. Because you know that they're going beyond what they're supposed to do.
Correct.
And they're going to get right to it, and they're going to be like, yeah, hey, let me get it for you, Just like your valet. Your valet, typically you're not really paying that person. It's part of your free service. But if I want him to run as fast as he can, you're going to give a better tip. But if I don't tip him and he wrecks my car because you're cheap, that's not the level of service you're expecting. You're expecting you're going to get my car, it's going to come back safe. That's what it is. But it's the additional. It's coming back to the additional. That's what I want.
Yeah.
And as we're becoming more of a service-based industry, we have a service-based industry, not necessarily just in like I said, hospitality, restaurants, and all these other services you talked about, casinos, hotels, what have you. But we're coming in from a standpoint of someone that tips. What about someone that receives tips? Mm-hmm. So if you're watching this show and you can comment on that, be great to hear what you have to say. Especially when it comes to people. Are people cheap? Are people really good for the most part? Do you think more than 70% of the people that you service are good tippers? And if not, then let us know. I'd like to know, because I don't want to feel like someone on the other end is giving you a critique based on.
Well, I think that when you look at, I'm always big on looking at averages, right? And 16% being the national average for Americans tipping, right? So that means that there's people tipping 20-25%, but it also means that there's people that are tipping nothing, 10%, 15%, right? And so there's a lot of people under there to bring that average back down. And so, but one thing that I personally don't like to see is the social media shaming by employees, right? And so I get it. You're working your tail off, and sometimes people suck. And I think no matter what you're doing in life, if you're working with people, you're going to experience people who suck, and it's not going to be pleasant, right? But when you're sitting there, oh my gosh, this person tipped me, $20 on a $300 bill, and oh my, this and that, and if they can't afford to, eat here, and tip good and fairly, then they shouldn't come here, and all this stuff, right? And the resentment and the anger is all directed towards that customer, when really it's like, well, at what point does the business owner take responsibility, right? Because they have an employee who's unhappy, right? And is there an agreement between, or understanding when you accept that type of job, it's you're accepting the fact that you are mostly paid off your tips. You're relying on those tips for that wage of that position to be worth your while, right? But you have to understand that not everybody's going to tip. So then within that industry, or within that career, if you would, because some people make a great career off of waiting on tables. But it's just like any other industry, right? Are you going to go work at, some small quick loan place? Or are you going to go work for a big bank, right? Are you going to try to make a living working at a local, small low end restaurant and get upset every time somebody only tips you $5? Or are you going to be the best waiter possible? Are you going to exceed and find ways to, really exceed people's expectations and work your way up to a higher end restaurant, right? If you're in Fresno, you go work at like the Cracked Pepper or Ruth's Chris, right? Where service is everything, right? And the expectation of those clientele is that I'm going to receive high service, so I'm going to expect, or I'm going to account for paying a higher tip, right? So anything you do, it's all about progressing, right? And I don't want to be one of those people that say, oh, well, if you're not happy with your wage, then go find a different career. You don't have to find a different career. You just have to better your career, right? You just have to seek better opportunities within there. And trust me, in the service or hospitality, it's go work at a better hotel, right? Stop, get away from that flea market of a hotel, right? That what do they call it? Roach motels and stuff like that, right? Go to a fancier one, right? Bring your level of service, bring your energy. I tell my son all the time, it's all about your body language, right? And your attitude, your demeanor. And he's a basketball player, so I'm always, tell him it's all about your body language on the court. People can see that, your coaches can see that, right? You're going to get pulled, right? You're going to miss shots. You're going to miss layups. It's not, you're going to have those days, like Jose said, we don't expect you to be perfect every single time. But if along those obstacles or along you fumbling, dropping a glass of water or whatever, taking an order wrong, if you're energetic, if you're positive, if your demeanor is right, it's still going to be appreciated, right? That goes a long way.
But I mean, that's where you get to the commission-based services. I mean, that's like your car salesman, all these guys that they have to hustle because they want the commission, they want the sale, they want I mean, so you can have the same reward and get the same result without this like negative feeling of like, okay, I didn't tip. And again, it goes back to, like I said, is everybody keeps assuming that the $20 I gave to Jose, if I don't give it, he's out $20.
Yeah.
But that $20, he's only going to get maybe 2 or 3 after he split it among everybody in that whole place.
Right.
So it's really, it's a collective. Is okay, if I'm a good tipping table and you're not a good tipping table, it doesn't matter. Jose still lost out. So it's got to be a collective, or stop taking and splitting tips amongst people and let whatever I give him, he keeps the whole thing. And that's it, because again, now you're going back to rewarding the guy that he sucks and he's spilling your drinks and he could care less and he's dragging ass.
Right.
But because I tipped Jose for working hard, he still gets part of that money. He has no motivation to do any better. So.
Well, I was in Oakhurst this past weekend with a group of friends. There was 17 of us, and pretty big party. And we went to one of the restaurants there, and I'm forgetting the name, so sorry I can't shout them out because they actually did a pretty good job and the food was great. But they were certainly overwhelmed with that size of party. Being in Oakhurst, they're not accustomed to that many people, right? Mm-hmm. And so Saturday, they were probably already at the capacity that they're used to. Then you roll in 17 people who are drinking and ordering all kinds of stuff, everything off the menu. And so you could certainly see that it was, they were at capacity. They did charge us the 15% because of the large party. But for me, it was the attitude, of our waiter. She was a little bit older, wasn't as, spunky, but yet she was very energetic. And if that makes any sense, right? Very energetic, very positive, very caring. She made you feel like she wanted to help you. Mm-hmm. And then we did the old, each couple's gonna, pay their own tabs, and now that she's having to break it all up and everything. And even though there's a 15% tip on there, I think everybody on the table gave at least a $10 extra tip, right? Where you would imagine, 10 times, 8, that's, an extra $80 plus the 15% that they made. And I think that's where you receive that extra, right? That's where it was like us saying, we want this to go to her because she gave us that extra experience. Now, whether or not it did, I probably doubt it, right? She probably had to split that up too. I don't really know how restaurants, facilitate things like that. Mm-hmm. But my logic would be, man, that should go to her, right? Because without her being the face of that company and really, making our experience good, then we would just leave it at that 15% and walk out the door, right?
Yeah.
So,
I will say that growing up and when I was younger, and I wanted to go to a fine restaurant, or at least what I thought was a fine restaurant within the area that I lived. I would try to take my wife out to eat, but I knew that I had to account for that tip. I knew that if I was going to spend $50 to $60 on a meal, and even back then, $50 was a lot of money for me, especially when you were working at minimum wage and you're trying to make an impression. You're trying to say, hey, those folks, and what's their expectation, when they're looking at the bill, okay, here's a $60 bill, and I'm talking about a bill that was back 20, 30 years back. Okay, so you expect to give 20%, okay, that's an additional, if you're just starting off, trying to make this impression, and I know that it's difficult for some folks, and sometimes that's what maybe pushes them not to go to a restaurant because, obviously restaurants, especially when you're trying to go out and impress, they may cost a bit more, right? And that is another group of folks that may say, well, they don't know, right? They don't know that tipping is expected and you should, and they walk away and now they give a bad rap again, back to that 16%. To these to everybody else that goes in there, and that could be a specific ethnicity. It could be someone says, "Hey, well, maybe they don't know their culture is different about providing tips." So that's another a point that I want to bring out. But you know, when I go to a restaurant that I feel the environment is there, and they're not requiring tips. For example, when I walk into In-N-Out, it's always busy. There's big old lines, but for some reason, those employees are trained to have exceptional customer service. And the same thing goes with Starbucks. People walk in the door and they're already shouting at you, "How you doing? I'll be with you in a second." Mm-hmm. That already makes me feel like, okay, at least I'm not being ignored. I walked in, they understand, they appreciate the customer that's coming in. Again, this is a training that they have. Mm-hmm. And you know, you may wait a bit more than normal, but the fact that they're consistently just engaging with you, "We'll be with you in a second. We'll be with you in a second." They're always acknowledging that you're there, makes you feel very important. And I think that's what kind of drives, I think, at least me, to know that, hey, I'm not just another customer. I appreciate the fact that you acknowledge me. I appreciate the fact that you serve me. And you know what? Here's an additional. I feel good. Yeah. And you know, and it may be that extra $10, that $5, but it's because they made me feel. And again, it's a marketing deal, right? Yeah. It's not. It's behavior, and they understand how the psyche works. They understand how people work. And I think that if you tap into that, then it's easier for that person to say, you know what, I'm willing to dip into my pocket and give you the additional 15, 20%.
But that's where you give kudos to the owners, because
Correct.
The owners, especially In-N-Out for years has been the highest paying, you know, fast food employer out there, right? They're, you know, back in early 2000s, you know, they were raving how the managers were making, you know, $80,000-$90,000 a year. You know, I'm sure it's a lot higher now. And, you know, back when minimum wage was $8, their employees were making 16, you know. And so they created this culture where I want to be here. Mm-hmm. And if I want to be here, it's hard as hell to even get accepted, right? Get hired on. But now that I'm here, I got to bust my tail because they have all these employees who just are ready to work and take my place. So if I show up with crummy attitudes, I'm moping around, you know, spending extra time in the restroom, I'm going to lose my job. And I don't want to lose my job because it's a high-paying job. It's a great paying job, right?
Especially for students that are probably, you know, this is the additional cash that they get for like fuel on their cars, clothing, you know, who doesn't want to work throughout that time and have that additional cash where they're not having to go to their parents? I mean, obviously, I would want my kids to be out putting hard on the books than out there spending a lot of time. But for the most part, it's a growing experience for them to be very independent and give them an opportunity.
And teach them how to work with people.
Exactly. You know? And, you know, you're not doing it for 40 hours a week. It could be 10 to 15 hours, maybe 20 hours over the weekends and stuff. But I think it's a good way. And I see the attitude when I walk into that restaurant. All those, and I call them kids because the majority of them are really young. They're out in the back and they're cooperating to try to make a product that they're coming to you. But there's communication going on. There's an attitude that I see, and I never see, like you said, crummy attitude. I'm always paying attention to what they're doing out there. And from the person at the counter giving you the service to the people out there, it really resonates, the attitude that I get. And that's why I don't wait 20, 30 minutes for my food. It could be anywhere from 5 to 10 minutes, but I'm willing to wait because I like the service.
Yeah, but the thing is, again, when you apply it to such a small industry, to go back to like Abel's example of like the Dutch Bros and this, like, you know, or your Starbucks, you're in this line. Okay, you go to Walmart, you have the same experience. You got 100 people working. You know, this guy, where's the clothing? Oh, the clothing is over here. Where's this? He's giving directions. You get in the same cowl line that you're going to put your stuff in, but I don't see a tip on their computer. I don't see him saying, hey, you know, let me give you 10% extra on top of my bill because I'm thankful for whatever you did. It's already baked into the service. And that's where, again, that's where this whole tipping culture has kind of gotten out of hand is I get the food industry. They prepared something. So did Walmart. They put something on the shelf for me. If it's not there, I'm not going to tip you, you know. If the store looks like crumb, like, I'm not going to tip you. But if I go into Walmart and everything's great and it's where I need to be and the cashier is fast, should there be a tip? They did a great job, just like any other person would do in my food industry. But we don't. We would think that's stupid. If I went to Walmart and there was a tipping, you would be like, what? Why? What am I tipping for?
Right.
And that's what I'm saying. That's where this, when you get into these like drive-through lines, there should be no tip. I'm getting no different service than the guy behind me and the guy in front of me.
I'm coming for your product.
Yeah, I mean, if I give you 20%, you don't let me drive in front of the guy in front of me, I get the same line. I'm going to get the same amount of service. It's going to take the same amount of time. So then that's why I'm not saying I'm trying to be cheap, but I'm saying like that's what we've kind of gone to is, especially during COVID, you said is like, we had this like Grubhub and we had this like Instacart and these guys like doing services for me. And I had people that were leaving our jobs to go to them because people were tipping like crazy. They were like losing their brains, like giving like $100 tips for somebody to go to the store for them. And then now they got pissed because people are like, well, I'm not going to give you $9 to go shopping for me, or $100 like I used to go shopping for me. And what happened? I don't want to pick up your drink anymore. I'm not going to pick up your food. It's like, well, that's your job though. You're getting paid to pick up my food, not to pick up my food because I'm giving you $100 for a $10 order, And that's what I'm saying. That's where we've gone to this train wreck of saying like, well, if you don't tip me, I'm not going to do the job at all. That's not how a job works. You do the job, and if you put me first, you get the tip.
And that's where I want to pin it back on the business owners, and don't sell somebody on a job saying, oh, but you could make great tips. I know the wage is low, but you could make great tips. Because now you're just you're basically saying like, I don't value you, but maybe you can convince the client to value you.
Yeah.
And in any of those industries that have a good starting wage, they usually those employees, they stick around. I think going back to the In-N-Outs and Starbucks, if you even look at their layout, it's a transparent layout, wide open. You can see what the employees are doing. Mm-hmm. And so then that triggers something else, right? You're like, nobody's back there twiddling their thumbs. I can see that. Yeah. Everybody's working, right? So then naturally as human beings, you're more patient, right? You're less patient when you're in the drive-thru, and I'm thinking about my experience to In-N-Out. I'm like, oh my God, what's taking so long, right? But when you get down and you're looking, you're like, man, these guys are working. They're busy, So let me be patient because there's nothing I can do. They're busy, right? But everybody's moving, everybody's working.
But you see how like if you were to apply that to government, imagine DMV if I was allowed to tip. How fast would I get in and out of DMV if I could say, here's 20 extra bucks if you can get me in and out? Yeah. They would be working instead of. Sometimes, it's always the joke with California DMVs is it's 5 hours and I don't see anybody doing anything.
Yeah.
So, I mean, corporate's kind of got some of that right. I mean, tipping can do something.
Yeah.
But,
it's the incentive. And that's kind of what, I've heard that. What if you privatize a certain government entities, right? Yeah. What kind of service would you have, right? And that's where kind of, that could be a different conversation, but I do agree with that sometimes. The private sector does have a way of trying to deliver a product or a service in a very streamlined way that they understand the customer. Yeah. Whereas in government, sometimes you have to understand the employees first, and they're first before the customers that you're serving. And that's the problem. We have it backwards where a lot of the times these government agencies they get accustomed to that, complacent to that environment where, oh no, you're not going to do that, not here. Well, shit, I'm here to pay for a fee to get my vehicle up and running, and I've been waiting for like 2 hours for you to call my number. Yeah. While I see all of you back there, I don't know what you're doing, but obviously the priority is not the person that's paying those fees.
Yeah.
And that's I do see a problem with that because I've experienced that, and sometimes to avoid that, then we go online. But what about those folks that can't do that? They have to sit their way through the process, and sometimes it's frustrating. Yeah. And now the problem is that you don't see this because it's happening where you're being replaced by the digital world, the computer. So these jobs that were there that pay such a great job, because they're not incentivized to try to help people, are being replaced now to cut costs. Yeah. Because remember, costs are associated with the employee, not only for benefits and what have you, which I think, that's great to have that. It's great to have that. But obviously, the level of service that's being provided, you can do much more with the digital world now. Yeah. And essentially, those jobs will be replaced at some point.
And there's an agency I deal with, quite a bit, and it's frustrating because like I understand DMV, there's 100 people, we're all trying to get different things. But this agency, you walk in and the automatic lights will turn on because no one's there. And you'll go to the window and there'll be like 5 or 6 people behind the window and they won't hurry up. They'll look at you and you'll wait 5 or 10 minutes before the person comes to help you. And then it's like you're bothering them. You know, it's like, oh, do you have an appointment? Like, appointment for what? No one's even here, you know. But that's the mentality because they're government. You're bothering them. You know, they don't realize they service you, not the other way around. I'm here to give you money. I'm trying to get something done. This is the only way to do it, you know. And it's amazing how that, because there's no repercussions, they're going to get paid no matter what. That's how it's run, you know.
Yeah.
If you're 5 minutes late, they don't help you, you know. And
But
if
if
you don't
you
have an
tip
appointment,
them-
they don't talk to you.
But if you tip them,
I mean, they're saying, like, if that was an option, if that was a way to say, hey, I know I don't have an appointment, but here's $20, can you get me in right now? That's what it does. It incentivizes the person who otherwise says, like, I don't really have to help you. I get my paycheck regardless.
Yeah.
I can be, you know, a jerk regardless. Nothing's going to change. So
So
I'm
this
gonna
is
do the bare
where,
minimum.
you know, because I was thinking, oh, shoot, man, this is kind of combating my point that if business owners were to pay a better wage, then you'd get a higher quality person because they'd want to be there, right? But the most important thing I think behind that, like my In-N-Out example, right, is, yeah, you can pay them well, but you also have to have a bullpen of people that are there to replace them if they're not living up to that expectation, right? These government employees, a lot of them are unionized or state employees that have, you know, all of these measures that have to be taken in order to get rid of them, right? So you're not going to get rid of that person. You know, it might take you 6-7 months, you know, after you put them on a PIP and go through all the formalities and, you know, it has to go through all the way up the chain. And then it's like, oh, for what? Oh, well, they're just rude to people. Okay, well, prove it, right? And you have this whole union or all these agencies backing them, right? So it can make it very difficult. So I do feel like, you know, a lot of these employees, they hide behind that, right? And then that's where you get this negative notion of unions, right? And oh my gosh, they're there to protect the lazy people, right? And you're like, well, they're also there to protect unfair, you know, predatory, you know, practices, all this stuff. And we've seen throughout history the benefits of unions for people like that. But then also, you know, we're reminded how much protection that they give those people who aren't willing to simply smile.
Yeah.
Say, sir, how can I help you? Oh, you know what? We do have an online service. Do you have a phone? You could actually pay for it directly on your phone. Mm-hmm. Oh no, you know, I just have my check. All right, let me, you know, give me 10 minutes and I can help you, right? We don't typically take those payments, but just like that little above and beyond, it's certainly not part of the culture, you know. And I always get that kind of sense when I go to like schools and stuff too. Like, you know, the people that work in the office, very just dry, you know, just yeah, no, yeah, and it's like, hey, wait a minute, turn off your teacher or your voice, turn that off because I'm a parent, you know, I'm not a kid, you know. I know you've been working with kids all day long, but you know, that conversation needs to be a little bit different, right?
And like you said, it may require a different culture within that setting. Mm-hmm. And a lot of times when that does happen, you try to bring that culture into a setting of government. It's not welcome because nobody wants to make a move that requires a change in attitude, a change in the way you service people. That's huge undertaking, and it requires constant training and constant understanding of what we're here to do, what our purpose is. We're here because people pay taxes. We're here because people pay a certain service for these particular rates or this particular service that we're providing, whether it's water, sewer, or even garbage for that matter. Whatever that is, and you expect that level of service as well. And I think, again, it's a huge undertaking, but I think people would appreciate that, hey, you know, we are here because of that. Without it, then, you know, who's going to supplement that income? Who's going to pay for my benefits? Who's going to pay for this? And who's going to pay for that? Right? So I think it's just a way of how we integrate that training or that service mentality. Because at the end of the day, that's what we are. America's turned into more of a service-based industry. Yeah. We're not really producing much. But going back to the tips, I want to circle back to the tips. Is maybe the question that I'll ask is, do you consider yourselves a good tip? Do you consider yourselves good tippers? Abel, I'll start with you.
Today I do.
Okay.
Today I do, but it hasn't always been the case. You know, and a lot of that came from having the means to actually tip, right? And so there was a time not too long ago where I always kind of resented tips, and I used all the resentment that I said today. I would use that as justification to not tip, right, or not tip, largely. But at the end of the day, I become a big, cheerleader of people who have great attitudes, make me feel good, treat me with respect, and are doing everything that they can to make the experience good, right? And so if I get that, I'm certainly, whatever my total is times it by 2, and take that decimal. That's how I do the 20%, right? Now, I will say though, I am also big on customer service. So if I don't tip you big, it's because I do not feel like you didn't. I feel like you didn't deserve it. And there's some times where I'll only give you 10%, and even though it's still 10%, that's my way of throwing a jab at you and saying you suck, right? Or you treated me like crap today, right? Before I would just put 0, and I was okay with that. Now, I don't. I feel a little bit guilty doing that. So if it's only a 10% tip, it's because I really felt that that person didn't deserve any more, right? Yeah. They still did their job. They still brought me my food. Okay, cool, but you're definitely not going to get that extra 10% because you just did it without caring very much.
I would say on average, I'm a good tipper. I have no problem giving a 0 tip. I hate this, like you said, the kiosk and you did nothing tip. I'm not going to do that, but I will tip at the end. I will tip like Starbucks. I won't tip on the app. I'll tip when I get there because if my drinks are there and I feel like it was, I kind of came quick and would expect them not to be ready, but they're ready. Okay, great. Or if the drinks are great, good, but not to just be like automatic. Here's your 20%. Oh, they tasted like crap. Okay, well, I guess that was my bad for tipping. So yeah. I would say on average, yes. But I still believe it's something that's earned, and it's not automatic.
Yeah.
So
yeah, and I'll have to agree. Nowadays, math is, you have to use math in order to tip, right? But nowadays with technology, they have that for you already. Do you want to give a 15%, a 20%, or custom and or other? The one thing that and the question was asked, are you a good tipper, right? And I said, I think I'm fair. And I want to say that I think I'm fair. And you'll always get at the least 15%, right? And how I calculate that, kind of to your point, if I have a $57 bill, then I just do it times 10%. That's $5.70. Then to add the additional 5%, what I do is I round off that amount to $5.70. That's $6. So that's half of that is $3. That puts me at $13. That's where I'm at. And that's kind of what I look at. So if you're looking at a math, go back, rewind this again and see how I do
so
it.
If you're in 5th grade multiplying.
Because I know math, for me, the biggest thing to calculate when they brought me the bill, and people like doing the tax, right? If you live in California, obviously you know that it's somewhere between 8 to 9%. Yeah. Then you look at the tax, okay, you double that, and that's the amount. Well, I know that I'm going to give you at least 15%, and hit or miss. Sometimes I give you a bit more, but that's the least that I make sure that at the least I give you. And again, that's how I calculate. I like doing that because for me, for the longest time, was like, well, how much is the tip? How much is the tip? And I would hear, well, you double the tax, and well, it doesn't matter. What is the damn tip? What is custom? So I thought 15% would be good. So I consider myself a fair tipper. Yeah. And there are times, like you said, that if I feel like I got that extra service, then boom, I'll give you the extra $10.
There's three times, there are 3 scenarios where I tip in advance, right, or at the beginning of the transaction, and it's valet, it's checking in a hotel, and it's if I'm going to be at a bar for a while, right? And obviously, if you're at a bar, you can imagine how busy the bar is all the time, right? So the tip is kind of an advance on the service, right? You're saying, look, I know you have a crap ton of people here, but I'm giving you a tip up front. Now, I would expect some great service, even, that service to be, on full display, right? Mm-hmm. And typically in those industries, when you do that, tipping in exchange for that above and beyond, I feel like those three, industries or those three employees typically get it, right? At the hotel, I always do that. If I'm on vacation, if it's business or, just like, again, if it's a small hotel and, not really a big deal, again, there's only so much they can do. My room could only get so great, right? But if I'm going to Las Vegas, I'm going to Vegas this weekend, right? I'm staying at Caesar's Palace, great hotel, right? Probably $100 is going to come out and up front and just say, I hope that you could put me in the best room, right? Because you have view options, right? You can literally go see a freaking parking lot as a view, which sucks, or you can get on the strip view with the, Bellagio, or was it Bellagio fountains? Whoever has the fountains, right? You can see that at night from the comfort of your balcony. You can have a balcony, you can have no balcony, you can have 2 bathrooms or just 1 bathroom. You can be put into a very nice suite, and it's worked for me in the past. In Vegas because they understand that hospitality. And it's amazing how many rooms go unbooked and how many extra suites or anything that they do have. And those people have discretion to give it to you, and especially if you tip them handsomely. So,
but you've agreed to my point. It's not about percentages.
Yeah.
When you tip that $20 at the bar, $50 at the bar, okay, if you have 1 drink, you've obviously exceeded the percentages.
Right.
But if you sit there all night and your tab runs up to $1,000, you didn't even touch the 15%. So that's what I'm saying. Like I'm saying, is like I hate the percentage because it should be just a dollar amount based on the type of service.
Right.
If I'm getting a coffee, a tip should be like $2.
Yeah.
Regardless if I get 4 coffees or 2 coffees, it's
right.
This is the job. It's $2, not 15%. So now it's $100 because I got so much food. We go to a place that serves a lobster burger versus the cheeseburger for $1. Why should I be giving you more tip? You took the same amount of job to do the same amount of service.
Yeah.
So that's why the percentage to me always drive me nuts because it's like
No, it's true.
I agree with what you're saying 100%. It's okay. The bar, here's an extra, whatever, $20, $40. If there's a couple of us, keep the drinks coming.
Yeah.
But not a percentage at the end of the night that says like, oh shoot, we got a $500 tab and now.
And you already marked up the alcohol, a ton, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, then obviously valet services, right? Because you're expecting, hey, here you go up front. I'm going to tip you. Don't take off in my car cruising, or don't park it in the furthest spot where the most break-ins happen, or hey, when you see me come back, go grab that thing, and don't keep me waiting out here in the cold or the hot, for too long. So,
and that's why I thought it was important for if we do have any viewers, especially that work in the tipping industry. Kind of give us your take on it. You know why? Because we talk a lot about how we feel, but do you see something different, right? Do you see someone like Rohi's, to Rohi's point, right? If I'm there and I see the menu and there's a lobster menu, filet mignon, but then you also have the burger. Do I tip you based on the burger price, or do I tip you based on the lobster price? And do you see that? And if so, what's your reaction to that? Because I get it. You're right, Rohi. The amount of service that's going to take. It's going to be the same thing. I'm going to come to your table. I'm going to take your order. I'm going to go back there, put the order, come back, bring it back, and still come back and circle around for any additional water or anything else you want. But you just paid for a bigger ticket item because it's on the menu versus the smaller ticket item. I mean, should you tip for the burger or should you tip for the lobster? Do they look at you differently? Well, you know what? Since you ordered the lobster, I'm going to give them that extra service. So what's your take on that? Yeah. I'd like to hear that.
And I think the old saying, if you can't afford to eat here or tip, don't eat here, right?
Pack
I
your
think
lunch.
I think that's just the waiter saying that. I trust me, it's not the business owner.
I can assure
the
that.
business owner wants you to keep going. If you can pay the bill that they have out there, they're going to be okay with that, and they'll coddle the waiter who doesn't get the tip that they wanted or whatever the case may be. But at the end of the day, don't forget waiters, waitresses, your bosses lining their pockets pretty fat still.
So in the spirit of tipping, what would be your tip? What's your tip of the day?
I think I gave it. I gave the tip. The three industries where you tip in advance. That was my tip.
I would say tipping with the expectation of an improvement in service, not meeting my level of service. So
my tip is make sure you floss the teeth you want to keep.
All right. Well, that does it for the weekly jargon. Thank you for joining us. And if you're watching this on a rerun, Feel free to still leave a comment. We'll certainly respond to you, and we'd appreciate it. Like, share, follow us, and be sure to follow us and subscribe on YouTube as well. That's all we got. Thank you.